As a person in the 18 to 34-year-old demographic, I can feel the pinch of what can only be described as the most boring topic that will be brought up at Christmas this year: the cost of living crisis. Buying groceries for one person can easily exceed $100, fast food is no longer a cheap alternative, and for some fucking reason, online games cost more than having a real-life copy of them. I learned this the other week when I went to buy a PS5, because soon it's finally going to have a game. I asked the guy if I could grab the digital edition console just because it was cheaper than the disc edition, and I shit you not, this was his response. Mate, what do you want that for? If you have ever been to a JB Hi-Fi, then you would understand my surprise, because there are two walls inside of every JB. One is the quirky alt girl with a septum piercing who you just assume lives inside of the store because you have never seen a more beautiful woman in your suburb before. And the other is the nerdy dude from uni that listened to Northlane before they were cool. Like, come on, dude, it's just not fair, the monopoly that they have on people who look like they're from the hipster area of your state, but also aren't the most insufferable people you've ever met. So while I was trying to work out if this guy even works here, he turns to me and says, "You like FIFA, bro? It's $100 online. Next week coming out, $80 in store, alright? Just keep it on the down low." Okay, man, I'll get the disc edition. It's fine, but like, how come it's so much cheaper in store? Don't worry about it, man. I don't know, it just doesn't sound right to me. Do you want the baker how he makes his fucking bread? No, you just fucking eat it. How about I sell you a loaf? So I got a disc edition of the PS5. This did get me thinking about what he said, and after I made sure I wasn't followed home, I started looking into if this was actually the case. And it turns out, yes, physical games are almost always cheaper to buy than any digital release. You might be having the same thought as me right now, because we're the same, which is, how is that possible? A physical game has more costs, like having a disc made, the game case being made, the cover art being printed and put on, and distribution to the store. Whereas a digital copy of a game is just online. You download it and that's it. From that basic outline, it seems like there's way less cost involved to just purchase it from an online store. But as I started to look into this side of the game industry, I learned something. I know nothing about how either of these industries work. First off, an online store like the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Store have 100% control over the online sale of their respective platforms. If you own a PS5, there is no other place to buy a digital copy of a game. So because they've cornered the market like that, they can charge whatever they want. Have you even seen Breaking Bad? In an actual store that you can walk into, which this generation knows nothing about, honestly, because they're too busy on their phones. Am I right? Having unsold copies of these games creates storage issues. Let's take the next 2 months, for example. With Spider-Man 2 coming out and then 3 weeks later, Call of Duty being released, you can expect that most stores are going to have a lot of copies of each game coming in. But if Spider-Man isn't selling well for whatever reason, where's this shipment of MW3 gonna go? In today's setting of having the convenience of buying a digital copy of a game, people need a reason to buy a copy from one of these stores. And the obvious way to get anyone to buy anything is to make the product cheaper than anywhere else. And this is why every game is cheaper in store. I told you, mate, the big companies are ripping you off online. Well, not exactly. The price advertised for a digital copy is usually dictated by the developers themselves. So really, that is how much the game should cost. But in the case of Australia, because places like EB Games, JB Hi-Fi, and somehow Big W all buy the new releases in bulk, they get a little bit of a discount. So instead of taking a cut in profits, the retailers are able to sell the game cheaper than online, even with the manufacturing costs, thanks to that bulk discount. If you look at it as I just laid it out, companies giving essentially their competition discounts so that they can outsell them doesn't really make a lot of sense. And you're right, it doesn't. But there's an added layer underneath it which helps to connect all of the pieces. If Microsoft and Sony stopped selling their games physically and instead switched to fully digital, there's a good chance that game-specific stores like EB Games would just go out of business. The others that survived, though, would probably not be too happy that a major revenue source for them was taken away, and probably would be reluctant to work with their company. So let me then ask you this: how would you buy a new console? Without a gaming shop, where would you go to get it? You can't buy the consoles directly from the manufacturers, and the main way to buy them at the moment really is to go into one of these retailers. It is something that I've never thought about until looking into this, but game companies and retailers have a very mutually beneficial relationship. Saying that out loud, I realize how obvious it is, but just let me cook. Without manufacturers, no one buys games from the store. Without the store, no one buys a console from the manufacturers. So as weird as it sounds, it is in Sony and Microsoft's best interest to overprice their digital copies of games. By doing this, it forces suckers like me to go to the game shop and buy the more expensive console, because after a few purchases, the price difference between the disc and the digital edition is covered by the amount of money I save from the physical copies of the game. I know I said a lot of words, but just let me break that down. I keep referring to this because it's just the next game that's coming out, like literally next week for me. When this video comes out, it is released, but Spider-Man 2 is going to be $125 on the PlayStation Store at launch. At JB Hi-Fi, it's $99. After 4 new game purchases, which I'll more than likely be done with by the end of the year, I have covered the cost of buying the more expensive console just by walking into a shop. Boiled down, I guess the answer to the question is that the reason for physical games being cheaper is because stores want to sell them as quickly as possible, whereas online, it costs next to nothing to have a buy page up. And I guess that leaves us with why someone would buy a digital copy over a physical copy. I don't know. They're lazy, I guess? If you're trying to work out which edition of the new gen console to buy now that the PS5 does finally have a game, I hope that helped. I didn't mean to. It's just like a side effect of me trying to work out why there's a difference, I guess. You know how like an asteroid hit the Earth and now millions of years later we have a moon? I'm the asteroid and you're the moon. So to all the moon people out there, thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate that more and more people decide to tune in to me answering a stray thought that I have in my head during the week. That is basically half of these videos on the channel now that I think about it. So if you do enjoy these, subscribe to see more, and if you enjoyed this one specifically, give it a like. Come on. I called you a moon, isn't that funny? Didn't you like being called a little moon? You should give a like for that, come on. I'm now gonna go back to my regular programming of waiting for the first ever PS5 game to be released, and then not speaking to anyone because me likey video game. Have a good one, and I'll see you later.